upstairs, please.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our Rams 53-man roster breakdown show presented by SoFi. Cannot wait to be at SoFi Stadium a week from tomorrow for the season opener against the Dallas Cowboys on Sunday Night Football. I'm JB Long, voice Los Angeles Rams, and I'm joined by our Rams radio crew, including Maurice Jones-Drew. It looks like he's at Machu Picchu on this holiday weekend. D'Marco Farr is locked in the bedroom, probably away from his loved ones. And Kirk Morrison from high above the Golden Gate Bridge. How you doing, gentlemen?
Good. Safer in here.
Well, we're going to spend the next 20 minutes or so taking a look at the decisions the Rams have made so far to get their roster down to 52. Yes, 52. They're actually one shy of the 53-man roster. Sean McVay saying moments ago they're going to take a close look at the waiver wire to see if they might add to what they have already as they prepare to go into game week. And just a reminder, this is only a starting place. This is not necessarily the roster that the Rams are going to have next weekend against the Cowboys, and almost certainly will not be the roster that makes it through the entirety of this 16-game schedule. Well, let's go around the horn, starting with MJD to get a big picture thought on the choices that the Rams have made so far.
Yeah, for me, JB, it just seemed like this is kind of how training camp went. Every time we got an opportunity to go and watch, you saw certain guys make plays, and you kind of just saw this already being molded into what the 53 or 52 guys that they wanted to kind of, have a nucleus of. And so there wasn't no real – I think the biggest surprise for me was Dante Dion getting cut, because he actually played really well throughout training camp. He was tasked to cover some of the top guys early on, and I thought he did well. But again, the Rams there wasn't those big surprises for me in this, and so I'm excited to see who they add to this group, and then from that going forward, who they add to their practice squad as well.
Yeah, Dante Dion, another one of those hard knocks casualties. If they're featuring you on HBO, look out. It's probably not good news coming your way on this weekend. D'Marco, you noticed they kept 10 offensive linemen this year.
Yeah. The first thing that stood out is the guys that we thought were going to make it, made it, with the exception of maybe two guys, and Josh Reynolds and a Van Jefferson. That might be the only, let's wait and see there. But as far as the offensive line, I was kind of pulling for Jamil Denby. Great guy, kind of struggled last season when they put him in. So you'd hoped he'd have another chance to, prove his worth in the NFL. But sometimes these guys just don't get better, and you just don't have room and you don't have time to wait. But the starting five, with the exception of Joe Noteboom because he got hurt last year, we saw them last year. We liked that group together. If you were to gave them 10 more games together, I think they had a chance to really be good. So when you add him back to the mix, hopefully he gets up to speed sooner than later. But you like that five, and you like the fact that with the extra roster spots, you can carry a true backup center, which will be something new this year. So Brian Allen actually has a role behind Austin Blythe. But I like the five. I like the depth. It's a shame for guys like Jamil Denby. Coloni is a guy that we liked, especially last year in Hawaii. But this is the NFL. This isn't college. If you can't contribute, you have to go. So I like the guys that they kept, but it's just too bad for the guys that aren't here.
D'Marco makes a good point about this year's active roster. Two more spots than normal. One of them has to be an offensive lineman. So you can have a backup center, a backup guard, and a backup tackle behind your starting five on game day. All right, Kirk, thanks for waiting your turn. Big picture thought from you.
A couple of surprises up for me, JB. I think one of them is that the Rams kept 6 wide receivers, though. I kind of envisioned 5, right? We knew Van Jefferson was going to be the 4th. Now, obviously, maybe elevated to the 3rd, maybe taking the place of Josh Reynolds, pushing Josh down. We knew Simba Webster was going to be your punt return, kick return type guy, but I thought it stopped right there at 5. But to see a guy like Tristan Jackson become the 6th wide receiver to go along with the 4 tight ends, that surprised me a little bit, because I think that may be, to MJD's point about Dante Dion, that could have been the extra roster spot maybe for a defensive back. I'm a little scared going into a season with only 4 listed guys as cornerbacks. Now, there's some guys who will do some spot duty in other places. Some safeties will have to do some work. But for me, I always felt more confident going in with 5 guys who can play corner, even kick down inside into the slot if needed. So that was the only really area that I saw that maybe the Rams could still be out there looking throughout this waiver wire over the next couple of days. But for the most part, I think, like to the gentleman have mentioned, it kind of played out the way we thought with the way training camp was. And let's be honest, in this evaluation of 2020, you're kind of going to stick with the guys who you know. And I always said this, I think the blessing in disguise about this roster, fellas, and I hate saying that you don't want to see guys who are injured, but I think Taylor Rapp kind of being banged up in training camp gave us the confidence to see guys like Jordan Fuller and Terrell Burgess and how well that they can be contributors, I think, this season.
Speaking of being banged up, a couple of updates from Sean McVay. We still don't know the exact status of the knee of Terrell Lewis, the rookie edge rusher. Wednesday seems to be the target date for clarity there. He has been ruled out for the opener against the Cowboys. He's the only Ram so far ruled out for week one. T. Howard, unfortunately, was scheduled to be a starter at inside linebacker with a knee injury of his own. He's going to be on IR. And then Ashawn Robinson, who was brought in at the nose from Detroit, will begin the year on the inactive non-football injury list. So that's why the Rams are currently at 52, not 53, with an option ahead of them here in the next 24 hours. You mentioned, Kirk, there, one rookie, one college free agent who did make the team, one of three, in fact, not just Jackson from Syracuse, but Xavier Jones from SMU, the running back of the nation in last year, and Aaron Banks along the defensive line from UTSA. D'Marco, maybe give us a high-level overview of that defensive front as they prepare to face an incredible offensive line from the Cowboys and Ezekiel Elliott in week one.
Oh, boy. Well, you better dig in deep against Dallas, and Zeke coming right behind those guys. I mean, that's just – they're a snootful no matter who you have up front, and that includes Aaron Donald. But I would like this defensive line better if you guaranteed Ashawn Robinson for week one, but that's no guarantee. But Sebastian Joseph-Day is a guy that fits in well between Michael Brockers and Aaron Donald. Strong as bull. He knows the system now, and he's on the rise. That Aaron Donald, I guess, it starts to rub off on other guys the way he works, the way Sebastian Joseph-Day works. So I like the group. I like the depth. I like the fact that you still have Greg Gaines waiting for his chance to get in there. Morgan Fox, from what I understand, is one of your strongest guys on the football team. So good depth, but I would ask Aaron Donald, can you do more? Can you stay on the field longer? Michael Brockers, too. Mm-hmm. Can you do more? Can you stay on the field longer, especially week one versus Dallas? Because looking at what's behind you, you know what Dallas's plan is going to be. We talked about this before the show. If you've got Zeke Elliott and you're looking across and you see a Micah Kiser or you see three safeties in the game and it's a pass play that comes in off the sideline, you're probably going to get a little bit upset. Let's run the football with these guys and let's see if they can stop us. So up front, it's going to be imperative upon Aaron Donald, Michael Brockers, Sebastian Joseph-Day, whoever's in the game, to be as stout as you can to protect those linebackers from those blockers. If you get guys in the face of Micah Kiser, you've got problems. If you get guys in the face of those three safety lineups that you're going to roll out there, you've got problems. So you may have to sacrifice your stats for the good of the defense, but that's the way it's going to have to be for at least week one.
We'll ask Maurice Jones-Drew about the running backs of the Rams in just a moment. But while we're on this side of the football, Kirk, let's talk about inside linebacker. It's difficult in this COVID environment to bring a player in off the waiver wire and have him ready for week one. But would you expect more than just the three, Kiser, Young, and Reader, they have at off-ball linebacker going into next week?
Yeah, I think for right now, they're happy with where they're at. I mean, obviously, you wish you would have Travon Howard, who look, he's really stood out for me throughout training camp. And I said, look, for a level of the defense, the second level that looked to be kind of inexperienced that you didn't know about, they really had a chemistry, he and Micah Kiser, throughout training camp. So for him to go down, you're going to work with three different guys. And I think all three bring something different. Troy Reader had, got a lot of experience last year to go along with the Micah Kiser, who didn't play, but obviously I thought last year he was going to be somebody that playing alongside Corey Littleton, that he was going to get better. But look, it is his position now this year. And then Kenny Young, who's still been a guy who's been unproven, but I just like the savviness that he's played with throughout training camp. But that being said, basically week one is a big test. And I'm looking at it this way too, JB. I really believe that week one is kind of a barometer throughout the league of where your team is at. This probably may be one of the I would say one of the more critical week ones of an entire NFL season, because you have a thought of your team, but week one will tell you, okay, yeah, we need to get better in this area. We need to do something. So I think you're confident where you're at now, but I think it'll be another evaluation that you'll have that big team meeting or staff meeting after week one to see if you need to make some adjustments.
No, I know it felt like a disappointing season last year for the Rams, but it's worth pointing out they still won 9 games, and that means they don't have the greatest waiver wire priority when you look to add someone at that position or any position going into next week. All right, Maurice, I think one of the more intriguing decisions was made at running back, where one of those college free agents, Xavier Jones out of SMU, not John Kelly, is one of the 4 running backs the Rams will take into week 1. What does that tell you about the depth against the Cowboys in the backfield behind Jared Goff?
Well, first, let me say this. With after 2 years of John Kelly, it felt like the Rams he maxed out, and they were like, "All right, this is what he is. We see this. We have this other young kid coming in, and Xavier Jones, who, when we saw him, he flashed. I mean, he showed some great quickness, burst. He was in there putting his nose in there, blocking. He knew the protections. So it was just like, okay, let's give this guy a shot. Maybe we have found something." And obviously, with Darrell Henderson going down, and you really not knowing his availability for week 1. I'm still very confident in having a 2-back system, right? Rarely do you see the third guy go in. Rarely do you see in the NFL 3 backs rolling at one time. So that was going to be new for the Los Angeles Rams. But with Malcolm Brown starting and him being your hammer and the guy that knows where he's going to be, and he's been in this system the longest and he knows where to go, that's awesome. Then you get some explosive plays with Cam Akers, throwing him in spots, getting him comfortable and bringing him along slowly. I believe if the Rams can run the ball efficiently. Now, I'm not saying they're going to break off, 30, 40, 50-yard runs. They may do that, but if they can be efficient, 4 yards or more every time you run the ball, that is going to open up the passing game. And they're going to get those opportunities because the Dallas Cowboys are going to play 2 high safeties right out the back. They're not going to show much respect to these guys because they haven't really put it on tape. So you get an opportunity to be efficient, break off some runs early. I think this running back group will start to mold into something that we'll see when they get Darrell Henderson back. And I think that it's going to help out the running game so much more, or the passing game so much more, with that play action pass.
I want to follow up on the 2 running back system, because in Detroit a couple years ago, we saw Malcolm Brown get hurt and the Rams only had 2 running backs active. And I think that day Sean McVay made an internal promise that he would never put himself in that predicament again. We're going into week 1 of the pandemic season. It's been a long time since anyone played a full football game or took a full workload in terms of handoffs. Don't the Rams have to have 3 back active for the Cowboys? And if that's the case, I read into this decision, they must feel pretty good about Darrell Henderson's status for that week 1 game, because otherwise you're putting a college free agent who is taking 4th team reps throughout training camp, potentially active on game day in a position where he might have to play on teams and in the backfield.
Well, I'll tell you this much. I'm comfortable with that, because remember, we saw a Dallas Cowboys team the first time we worked with a 4-string quarterback starting in preseason week 1, and all of a sudden he became Dak Prescott, the guy that we're talking about now. So you just don't know. When those guys get opportunities, you want to hope you hope that they prepared and they're able to show their abilities. But I truly believe this, that you're right. Sean McVay made a internal promise, and so he wants to make sure that he has 3 healthy guys on week 1, just in case. Now, Jones may be on special teams doing things like that, and he may not get any reps at running back, but you always want that insurance policy there. I do believe, though, and being a guy who's come out of a 2-back system in the pros and in college, if you can get 2 guys rolling, everything opens up. We've been so blessed and fortunate enough to have a guy like Todd Gurley that you can lean on, where most teams haven't had that. I think this 2-back system will work as it goes on. And then again, when you get Darrell Henderson all the way back healthy, that 3rd back is going to keep him fresh, and it's going to allow this offense to flourish. But I'm always going to go into a game with 3 guys active, always 3 guys active, because you don't want to get caught in Detroit with having just 1 backup, and then all of a sudden you have to run Todd every play.
I want to piggyback on that really quickly, because I think last week I was, obviously jonesing for football, ready for week 1. So I rewatched the Super Bowl, and I think rewatching last year's Super Bowl 54 really put in perspective on how I think the running back position should be in the NFL. Remember, the Super Bowl champion Chiefs, they had Damian Williams, who was their starter. But if you think about LaShawn McCoy, who worked his way out throughout the whole season, but then I really look at the other division opponent for the Rams and the San Francisco 49ers. Their starting running back was Raheem Mostert, that started the season 4th on their depth chart, behind Tevin Coleman, Jerick McKinnon, Matthew Breida. And then it was Raheem Mostert, followed by their 5th running back, Jeff Wilson. Now, they start the Super Bowl, it was Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson, the guys who started 4th and 5th on their, respective depth chart. So that's why I think the Rams, the more backs, the merrier. But the one thing I can say this to MJD, D'Marco, JB, they all bring something different. They're not the same, which really, to me, that's why you keep different backs, because they'll all have a different skill set and be a different matchup problem for different teams.
Yeah, I'm not doubting the choice of X Jones. I think they clearly see more value and upside in him over the long haul. I'm just skeptical that a gentleman who met Sean McVay in person for the first time a month ago is going to be thrown into the fire against the Dallas Cowboys. Now, visual survey here. Just raise your hand if you thought leaving SoFi Stadium after the second scrimmage that rookie Samuel Sloman was going to be the place kicker. So my question is, and D'Marco, you can take your best stab at this. What changed over the last week that made them go with the rookie, the only player who has not played some form of professional football, who was their 7th round selection?
Well, if it's close, you go with your draft pick, right? I mean, I think that's the way the NFL works.
Tell him, D'Marco. Tell him.
I mean, if it's close, if you invested draft capital in the guy, you're going to go with the guy you drafted. So, and that's on the other guys for making it close. And, Sam Sloman wasn't bad. He wasn't horrible. I think we were looking for one other guy that seemed to have an upper leg on the other two, but it wasn't like he was that far behind. So if it's close, go with your draft pick. And things can change. You know how place kickers are. As soon as one guy starts to struggle, you start to bring in 6 or 7 guys for auditions, and away we go again. We talked about this. Cairo Santos was on this football team. Who was the guy that kicked you in Tennessee?
Sam Ficken. Kicking with Ficken.
Kicking with Ficken. I mean, things change, and you know how place kickers are. So if it's close, go with the guy that you drafted. But I like the guy. I mean, he's built like a kicker. That's a funny way of saying what position he plays, but you can tell he's got a strong legs. And the one thing that we couldn't get from training camp this year and scrimmages is live reps on kickoffs. Not that there's many anyway, but depending on where he puts it and how he puts it and what returns you're going to get from the guy, that would have factored into everybody's evaluation process. But like I said, if it's close, go with the guy you drafted. Why waste
a couple things we've learned about Samuel Sloman in the last 24 hours. First of all, he does prefer Samuel, not Sam. So we'll go with that.
Oh, okay.
Apparently he saved his best for last. And on that Saturday, when we saw him last at SoFi Stadium, Johnny Hecker was away for the birth of his second child. And also Cooper Kupp was his backup holder. He was taken off the field early and did not return. So I think, I'm not going to say they threw out those reps, but I think they de-emphasized them and were willing to take this competition into the last week. And that's where Sloman, in that 40 to 49 yard range, where Greg Zuerlein really struggled last year, proved his worth in terms of being the guy that they're going to start this season with. And I can't help but notice that the guy he's trying to replace, Greg Zuerlein, who holds numerous franchise records, is going to be across the sideline with Bones Fossil on Sunday Night Football in 8 days. All right, we'll talk about that Cowboys matchup to finish this show. But real quick, how about the quarterback choices? I thought if there was a year where Sean McVay might be inclined to keep 3 quarterbacks, this was it. But instead, they released Bryce Perkins. They do hope to bring him back on the practice squad, so we'll see what type of flexibility that might give them on game day with quarterbacks. Kirk or Maurice, whoever wants to take it, they're rolling with Jared Goff and John Wolford on Sunday.
I'll take it. I think you have to trust in your coaching staff and what they believe in, right? To me, John Wolford earned the right to be the backup quarterback throughout training camp. In those scrimmages, he showcased abilities that we haven't seen in a long time. I mean, running the ball, putting the ball where it needs to be. He shows great leadership. I think he might have won them over more in the meeting room, though, understanding this offense, really being that, and we've talked about this, JB, that cerebral guy in the room that Jared can lean on. What did you see? What are you thinking here? Still being another voice of confidence, again, because this whole thing is built around Jared Goff, right? You want Jared Goff to be as comfortable, as poised as possible. And so if let's just say, if Jared were to get hurt, John can come in here and run the same offense and do everything. But the other thing that he has over Jared is he's athletic. And so he can scramble and get you those, those first downs. And we have 2 defensive guys here. Let's ask them, what is it feeling like when it's 3rd and 8 and everyone's covering, the quarterback scrambles for 9 yards?
I'll give you an example. We played Buffalo, up in Buffalo, and Rob Johnson from SC was their starter. And we messed around and knocked him out, and they brought this little guy in off the bench called Doug Flutie. It was a nightmare to try to catch up with this little guy. You can't rush all out against guys that can move. If you get too far upfield, they'll pull it down and run. They'll make you pay. So it makes you rush down the middle of guys more. It makes it tougher on Aaron Donald to rush the passer because you have a scrambling quarterback. It's just a little bit different. But it's a little bit different running in a scrimmage when you know you're not going to get hit versus running in a game where you can be punished if you're between the hash marks. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
a little bit different. Yeah.
Marco, you cannot blow on the quarterback, okay? So he'll be fine.
Well, no. I mean, you'll get flagged for it. I can do it. I'll just get flagged for it.
Okay.
I'll say this. I think that, for me, watching John Walford at Wake Forest, and especially his senior year, you knew the kid had talent. But I think that if he's 6'4", 220 pounds, look, he's probably drafted, and we're not even having this discussion. We're more confident in him. But I think you mentioned it, guys. Last year, this is where he earned the job and the right, being on the practice squad, giving a great look and giving the defense fits to a point now. He learns the offense even more. The confidence is there. And you go into week one with these two quarterbacks. But let's just be honest. If there's a break glass scenario, if necessary, there still is a Blake Bortles who's out there on the market. Just if something did happen, catastrophic, that you can still go to someone else outside of the organization to get you through a couple weeks, 2 weeks, whatever may be wrong with Jared. But I'm fully confident in John Walford, and I think we'll see what Bryce Perkins can do as a practice squad guy, because I think he'll be out there as well. So it'll be a different room, but I'm fully confident in Walford.
And don't you say Josh Rosen, Maurice. I know you're about to.
I wasn't doing.
I know you're about to.
I'm not bringing that bias here. You know how I feel about Rosen, but I do. Like I said, when you watch, being at practice, watching Wolford and what he was doing, and then watching him practice play in this scrimmage, he earned the right. He earned that, and there's nothing I don't care if you can go out and get Blake Bortles, you try to go get Josh Rosen. Wolford earned the right to be the backup quarterback because he was consistent every day. Like, I think that's the most important thing going into week one is consistency.
Correct.
And he showed that from the first day of practice, talking to people, to when I was there all the way to the end. And that's important.
I mean, I don't want to compare him to Andy Dalton, but it is intriguing to me to see your first opponent have a former Pro Bowler as a backup to Dak Prescott in this pandemic era, where you're not just one play away, you're one bad test away from having your quarterback be down. And the Rams go into a new season without a drafted quarterback, without a quarterback who's ever dressed for an NFL game. Definitely an intriguing storyline to watch. All right, I want to give each of you a chance to preview the Cowboys matchup a little more than a week from right now. We'll go Kirk, Maurice, and D'Marco. We'll give you the final word. So it's McCarthy, it's Nolan against Sean McVay and Brandon Staley's first game as an NFL defensive play caller. Where does your mind run, Kirk, in terms of the matchup that might decide this contest?
I got to lean on the middle linebacker position, right? Remember, everybody knows about what Corey Littleton was for this defense last year. He gets the big free agent contract with the Raiders, so everybody's going to keep that circle around Micah Kiser. And, your first contest, you go up against Ezekiel Elliott. That's the matchup I want to see. It's Micah Kiser. You can throw in Kenny Young as well. He'll be the other starter in the middle. I think it's those guys and how they handle Ezekiel Elliott. That's going to be a tough, I think, challenge, but at the same time, this is where you can prove yourself. I think for Micah Kiser, he's got the confidence, but you go out and you play well week one against Ezekiel Elliott, that's only going to bode well for him the rest of the season. But I believe that that's just a big matchup of this game is, can this defense, especially the defensive front without A'Shawn Robinson, can they create some penetration? Can they create a wall and keep Ezekiel Elliott bottled up? If they're able to do that, I feel confident that the offense will be better than they were last year in Dallas. And I think the defensive backs, they'll play well. They'll be up for the challenge, but it's just about that second level of the defense. I'm looking forward to Micah Kiser and Ezekiel Elliott.
Yeah, I'll say this. I think the Rams have, for the most part, have got the betterment of the Dallas Cowboys, except for last year, week 15. And if I'm Mike McCarthy, I'm going to go back and watch that tape, because not only did they win the game, they neutralized Aaron Donald. They found a way to not allow him to impact the game. And so, as a Rams fan, you hope that McCarthy wants to come out and throw the ball over the yard and let Aaron get to Dak and create pressure. But it's going to be important that Brandon Staley and this defense and these guys that these new pieces are very firm in their run fits, because that's what we saw last year in week 15. Guys weren't where they were supposed to be, and then guys were missing tackles. It was a little bit different. You could tell the Rams were a little sore and beat up from some tough games down the stretch. But it's going to be important to get Dallas in those third and longs and allow your corners like Jalen Ramsey and guys to continue to cover these dudes and let Aaron Donald impact the game that way. Offensively, I think it's going to be really important that they establish the running game early and often. When you look at the Dallas Cowboys and what they've added, yes, they've added some old pieces, but these dudes can rush the passer, right? Everson Griffin, we saw when he was in Minnesota getting sacks consistently. Aldon Smith, even though he hasn't played in a long time, he's just another weapon out there that you have to go against, right? So you want to make sure that you wear those dudes out running the ball and use your play action pass and try to stay out of those long drops. I think it's going to be a great matchup. I think it's going to be Kirk said week one in general is a very important game. I think for the Rams, it is the most important game because, again, let's remember there 3 teams that make the wild card this year?
Yes.
The Cowboys or the Rams are going to be either fighting for that wild card or trying to get in the playoffs down the stretch. And that is going to come back to what you did in this week 1 game. So this game has a lot of influence on who makes the playoffs, who doesn't. And it's going to be very important to start fast against the Dallas Cowboys.
Especially because you go to the East Coast for early kickoffs in 3 of the next 4 weeks. All right, final word, D'Marco, it's all yours.
Not going to lie, this one scares me to death, man. Zeke and Dak, they deserve their respect, and I'm worried about that side of the ball. And Amari Cooper, everything they present offensively is scary. But what really scares me is what's coming the other way defensively. And you just mentioned some of them. DeMarcus Lawrence is a tough matchup, especially because he's a left defensive end, which means that's Rob Havenstein. And then you've got Everson Griffin, who might have lost a step or might have lost a little bit on his technique, but, he can pick you up and move you. And Andrew Whitworth is not the biggest guy in the world. And then you got to factor in Aldon Smith. And if you want to have some fun, guys, go back and Google search Aldon Smith versus Adam Goldberg versus the Rams way back when. And just sit back and watch that tape. He is an absolute Ram killer. So that guy scares me, that defensive line. And then their linebackers are also they're uber talented on defense. So if you can't run the football, if you can't make them honor your running game, they'll just tee off on Jared Goff. And that was the game plan all of last season. So this is going to be a tough matchup. I think the onus is on the guys up front, number 1, Jared Goff, number 2, and then Sean McVay, number 3, coming up with a great game plan to neutralize this pass rush that's coming after you. Because if you have to drop back in a 3rd and 15 situation, you've got no chance. Absolutely no chance against this. Really. I mean, so this is a good group, a great group up front. If you don't handle them well, this could be a punishing day. This is a really, really scary matchup.
You guys all did really well to highlight those position battles. I'll only add this. It's always a concern week 1, tackling and ball security. I don't think it's ever been more true than following an offseason like this one, where you haven't done much more than thud a ball carrier, right? And then thinking back to being in Arlington and how much of an issue that might have been, the worst tackling performance I've seen from Sean McVay's Rams going up against the Cowboys last year. And ultimately it cost them a playoff spot. So we'll see how they open on Sunday Night Football and open SoFi Stadium. All right, that's a wrap on our Rams 53, although for now 52-man roster breakdown show presented by SoFi. Looking forward to seeing what they do over the next 24 hours. And the expanded practice squad roster, 16 players, many of whom undoubtedly were campmates over the last month or so, will be back in Horns. Make sure you check out all the Rams content this week as we get set for that home opener. In particular, the Rams virtual kickoff for charity event is tomorrow at 5:20 p.m. on Rams digital and social platforms. Jared Goff, Sean McVay, many others will join us, and it's for a great cause. And then tons of opening week content on the Rams platforms to get you ready for Dallas for the opening week of SoFi Stadium. For Maurice Jones-Drew, for D'Marco Farr, Kirk Morrison, I am JB Long. Have a good rest of your holiday weekend.